7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2.
Hey everyone, my name is Sim. If you're here, you're probably starting off your crypto journey, and this is going to be the first piece that's really going to introduce you to that. And I'm happy that you're doing it. It's a really big step. It can be daunting at the beginning, but we're going to try to make it as simple for you as possible, and ideally try to give you the tools necessary so that you can understand what's going on, and especially if we are strategizing together, this will really help you set the scene for those strategies and understand a lot of the pieces in depth. So what we're going to be covering today is basically an overview as to what is the reason that you should be getting into these markets. Again, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not going to give you financial advice. I'm just going to give you kind of an argument or knowledge about why it is a good idea to do that. Is something that I would do. If you would like to take that advice and act upon that, that's up to you. But again, I'm not a financial advisor myself. I'm a good advisor, but I'm not a financial advisor. If you want to call me as a friend, I can definitely advise you. So we're going to kind of look at the macroeconomic situation. These later pieces in the series will actually look at what each crypto kind of does, or at least what a lot of the cryptos do, so you can start to understand, like, what is this, just magical internet money we're looking at, or is this, what is the fundamental function of these things? Then we'll look at how to enter the markets, then we'll look at how to stay in the markets, then we'll look at how to exit the markets, and that should give you a cohesive picture as to why having a strategy that includes all those pieces can be really, really valuable, and that'll give you the knowledge to be confident in these markets. So thinking about just the overview, when you're thinking about the overview as to why you want to have a strategy, let's just start off with that. One of the biggest reasons why most people fail in this market and participating in these spheres is because they don't have a strategy. They don't have a plan. And if you don't have a plan in life, you're probably not going to end up where you want to end up, because you don't even know where to end up, where you want to end up, right? So having a strategy is one of the biggest ways that you can guarantee that you're increasing the probability of you making money in these markets and not losing money. Now, our goal is always to not lose money, so I'm going to always just touch on that point. So just to reiterate, the point of what we're doing here, point of us doing strategies, is that you don't lose money. If you make money, great. That's a bonus. So the reason why it's really good to take a look at strategy is because this market is very psychological. This is a psychology game where human emotions are used against the average person by much more skilled players like hedge funds and traders and professionals who know how to play with the money. They use human emotions to trick you out of your own money. And we'll go into depth with that later on. But the basic gist of it is, first, you'll be fearful of getting into the markets. And at that point, the smart money will move into the markets. Then you will have, once they pump up the price of an asset, say like Bitcoin, when it was $3,000, you were fearful of getting in. So the smart money bought Bitcoin at that point. Them buying Bitcoin drove the price up. Once it got up to $60,000, now you, instead of having fear of getting in, you're getting fear of missing out, which is FOMO, which is, again, an emotion. And because of that, without understanding the market, many people will get into the market and put their life savings into the market. And that will drive the price up even higher. Once the price gets up to a ridiculous amount, you will start to have greed. And that greed will make you want to have more and more and more. And at that point, the smart money will actually make the markets drop by selling all of their assets. And then the emotion of greed will be used against you to make you lose money. So it's always emotions that are used to basically make you lose your money. And that's why 80% of the people, or over 80% of the people that participate in this market fail, and a very small percentage of people actually succeed. Understanding the emotional piece and having a strategy that covers all of that really lends itself to you increasing the probability of succeeding. So when you are going through this journey, always try to keep certain things in mind, like, what is your relationship with money? Are you in kind of a lack mindset? Is this something that is this money life-changing to you, that if you were to lose it, it would completely change you as a person? How do you feel about it? And that would also determine what this what this money specifically means to you. You know, if somebody's putting their life savings, that comes with a lot of stress and a lot of kind of importance on it. Whereas if it's for somebody else who it's just kind of a learning experience, they may not be so attached to the money and it may not matter as much, and them losing that money wouldn't make that big of a difference. The reason why those things really come into the forefront is because that's going to determine how risky you can play with it, right? Because in this whole market, you can invest in coins that could go to zero, but you can also invest in coins that would multiply 5 or 6 times. You can invest in coins that could go 1,000 times. It just depends on the level of risk you're willing to take. So that level of risk is going to be determined by how you are relating to the money that you're investing and how much you're willing to risk and how it's going to make you feel and what kind of lifestyle you're willing to get out of it. And all those pieces are covered in a well put together strategy. The other thing is this is a very emotional experience. Because these are emotions that are kind of used against you, then that lends itself to this being a very emotional experience, because the emotion of watching it grow really is euphoric. The emotion of the 30% drop, which is very regular in this market, like it dropping 30% is just a healthy part of this market. But for somebody who hasn't experienced that 30% drop is like, it's a pit in your stomach. So it's a very hard emotion to deal with. And one of the ways that a lot of people lose money is they enter without not knowing what's going on. When the market drops 30%, which is usually because of manipulation, the person who doesn't understand actually gets fearful and sells at a loss. And on the other side, the smart money who actually is manipulating the market gets to buy and basically take some of your money. So this emotional roller coaster, as I like to call it, you really have to understand the emotional side of things and understand which emotions you're going to be feeling and really deal with those ahead of time in your strategy. That's really, really going to be one of the keys to actually succeeding in this market. You also have to, because of the volatility of the market, you really have to understand the larger market dynamics and why things are happening the way that they're happening and what kind of timelines to expect those things to happen on. So what do I mean by that? Why does Bitcoin's price spike every 4 years? If you think about it, in the last 2 cycles and again in this time, it's almost like clockwork, where it spikes every 4 years, then it drops off in a massive way. Then there's some time where nothing happens, and then it spikes again, about almost exactly 4 years later. And the reason is because when you're looking at Bitcoin or blockchain, let's just look at Bitcoin, because everything is tied to the price of Bitcoin. So we're just going to speak about Bitcoin in this case. Bitcoin is a code that's run on a bunch of computers. At its very fundamental level, Bitcoin is just a ledger that keeps track of everybody's different accounts. But this ledger is not held by one company. It's actually held by many, many different computers that people are running. Those are the ones we call miners. What those miners are doing is their computers are effectively keeping track of how much Bitcoin each person has. And because there's thousands of miners, there's thousands of records, so no one person can kind of change the record. That's the fundamentals of Bitcoin. It doesn't do anything else. But within that code that's running on the computer, there's a very particular property. It's called the Bitcoin halving or the Bitcoin halvening, depending on who you speak to. So what that means is the code says every 4 years, half the Bitcoin will be produced as were produced the 4 years before. So in 2020, May of 2020, 900 Bitcoin started getting produced. Before that, 1,800 were produced. So as we know with anything, when the supply of something that's in demand goes down, the price goes up. So every time the supply of Bitcoin drops every 4 years, right around that time, people start actually purchasing, the smart money starts purchasing Bitcoin because they know logically if the supply is going to drop, the price has to go up. As they move into the market, that actually drives the price up. Then when the rest of us, people who don't understand what's going on in the market, the average person, let's call them, they're also known as retail investors in the crypto sphere. When retail investors see the price of Bitcoin going up, they're no longer fearful of buying it. They actually start to FOMO in. They get fear of missing out, and they start to buy it. That then drives the price even higher, and that just kind of cascades, where more and more people go into FOMO, and more people move into the market until it spikes to a completely overvalued, ridiculous price. And by that time, the smart money that's actually bought the Bitcoins at the beginning, they sell them, and that causes the price to crash in a major way. And somebody who doesn't understand that dynamic, understanding that, hey, here's the Bitcoin halving in May, here's the price going up, then it spikes until some point, and then it drops off. Somebody who doesn't understand that dynamic is going to get onto this roller coaster, think that this is just an easy way to make money, and when it does drop off, they're not going to know why it dropped off. So it's very important for you to understand, especially if you're doing a strategy, for you to have a strategy that looks at that cycle of boom and busts, to make sure you're timing things correctly in a way so you are not part of the people who actually keep holding it until it drops off. You're actually one of the people who buys in at a good price and then rides it up to a higher price and actually sells it at that point, you know. So understanding the bigger dynamic really helps you understand what's going on and make educated decisions. Understanding the emotions really helps you understand how people lose money by their emotions getting taken advantage of. That helps you not lose money. Having a set strategy of how to get in, what to get into, what the fundamental use cases are, what kind of teams they have behind them, how to spread out your portfolio, how to manage your risk, what kind of taxes you need to pay, what kind of tax strategy you need to have, how to stay in the markets, what investment strategies you need to have, how to exit the markets, how to make sure you have all of these pieces in order and not make mistakes like transferring money from banks. So all of these are kind of tiny little parts of a bigger strategy that if you have it in place, it really lends itself to you not making all those mistakes that the average person makes in this market. So that's kind of the reason why you need a strategy. I hope that made some sense. And we'll be describing this in the next pieces that you'll be listening to. And if you're doing the course, you'll actually have a full course on this strategy. So it'll make a lot more sense if some of it didn't. But now here's the reason why I personally think it's a really good idea to move into Bitcoin for myself. I'm not saying this is financial advice for you. You can do whatever you like, but here's my argument for it. So up until now, you know, we've been living in a world where the idea of generating wealth and creating a good life for yourself involved getting more and more money or cash. And the way the smartest people have always done it is through investments, and that's still the case. The traditional investment vehicles like investing in real estate, investing in stocks, investing in bonds, those are great ways of making money. Up until now, they've done fantastically. And even a lot of people, you know, they used to hold cash at the bank, and the bank would give them X% interest, and people were saving money and earning interest, and that was a good way of for a long time. It was thought to be the one of the great ways of at least saving money. What's happening with that is we trusted governments and banks to make sure that the supply of money was controlled, that there wasn't hyperinflation, that there was some fairness in the system. So, you know, if you save for your retirement, it's still there at some point because you can trust stocks, you can trust bonds, you can trust governments and banks and institutions. And a lot of that is still the case. But what's happened in the most recent kind of, especially this crash that we've had, the whole crisis, the COVID crisis, is the governments and banks who were supposed to make sure that the monetary supply and the purchasing power of money was conserved, they've actually started printing a ton of money and debasing the currencies. And what debasing the currencies means is, like, if you have, you know, $1 billion in existence and we all worked hard for each one of those dollars, then we know X amount of hard work is equal to X amount of dollars. And nobody can just get a bunch of dollars without actually doing work. That's the whole point of having money in society. But in response to this crisis, many governments and banks started actually printing money. And when you look at the amount of money that they're printing, it's actually, because if there's $1 billion and all of us worked for it, and you just print another $1 billion out of thin air and you just give it out to people or give it out to corporations, then the initial $1 billion doesn't have the same purchasing power, because now there's $2 billion in the system. So effectively your purchasing power got cut in half, right? So each government, the world governments, and each central bank has been effectively printing tons and tons of money. And what that's doing is that's making the purchasing power of the money that we have go down. If you haven't looked into this, definitely please do. It's something really interesting for you to understand, because it affects the life of our children. Because one of the biggest reasons why we're, saving money and creating a good life is, of course, for ourselves, of course, for our retirement, but also for our children and grandchildren, to leave something to the people that we love. And if somebody is just out there printing money and basically stealing the purchasing power of your money, they're not just stealing it from you, they're stealing it from your children. They're stealing it from the future. So when you actually look at kind of the reduction in purchasing power, one of the ways that a lot of smart investors have always made sure that they were immune to that is to invest in assets that grow at a faster rate than the debasement of the currency. So you buy an asset that actually increases in value faster than the currency is decreasing in value effectively, right? So that's been like real estate, that's been stocks up until very recently. And now a new asset that's come out is cryptocurrency. And now, up until now, it's been a little bit iffy, like, hey, if there's this new money invented, is the government going to allow that? What's the future of it? We're not 100% sure. But this year and last year, 2020 and 2021, it became really obvious that corporations like Tesla and PayPal and thousands of other corporations and many other governments and even like city halls and organizations and funds have started to trust Bitcoin as a great investment vehicle. They rely on it. They trust that it's a good place to put your purchasing power, and they know that it is going to be able to grow at a faster rate than the currency is being devalued at. So it's a good way for you to take your purchasing power, which is all money is. You take your purchasing power and you put it into an asset where that purchasing power is either conserved or it actually grows. So over time, you can buy more with it. You can do more with it. You can effectively leave to your children or have for yourself later in life a lot more purchasing power than you had before. And that is one of the reasons why for me, it's such a good idea to buy Bitcoin and buy other cryptocurrencies. Because when you think about it, when the internet came out, the world was completely different before the internet. And the internet came out and revolutionized how we do almost everything in the world. You can run whole businesses on it, and how you can understand how valuable the internet is. That's why the most valuable companies in the world now are internet companies. Now, the way the internet works is when you click on your computer, that information is sent to a server somewhere that Google owns or Amazon owns, but they do the work, they pay for the server, they pay for the electricity, they send you back the information, and they add that value to your life. And so they get paid the trillions of dollars. That's how the internet's been working, right? Now what's happening with cryptocurrency is all Bitcoin, Ethereum, all of these are just computer networks that are being run. But instead of a big corporation running it, it's a bunch of people running computers at their house, right? And that's all it is. We call them miners. There's all Ethereum, Bitcoin, all of them are just computer networks that are running at people's houses. So when you click and you want to do some work, like for example, let's say you want to transfer some money, which is valuable to you, then you click, you want to send some money, it goes to a computer that some guy's running at his house that's mining Bitcoin. That computer does the work. The person pays for the computer, pays for the electricity, sends you back that information that adds value to your life. So you pay them in Bitcoin. And that's what these coins are. These coins are effectively a new way of doing the internet. So when we're thinking, okay, before the internet came out, the world was different. When the internet came out, it revolutionized completely the way that we do the entire world, which we couldn't have predicted how crazy it was going to be. And then the amount of value that the internet generated was insane. So if you'd invested in it a long time ago, today you would be sitting on a large amount of wealth. The same thing is happening with cryptocurrencies. If cryptocurrencies are a new way of doing the internet, which, instead of companies running the internet, now it's individuals running the internet, as I just explained, then 10 years, 20 years, 30 years down the road, when this technology matures, it genuinely has the potential to run everything in the world. Same way the internet runs everything in the world today, cryptocurrencies have the potential to run everything in the world in about 10 to 20 years. And you get to participate in that at this point, at such a nascent stage, at such an infant, in its infancy, when we just think it's magical money, but it's actually coins that pay for work to be done on computers that are running on that network. They're not just magical money, they actually do work. And then if you find the coins that do work that's valuable to society, then of course society is going to pay you for it, right? Like, for example, Facebook is a bunch of computers that add a lot of value to society. So we pay Facebook a ton of money. Airbnb is a bunch of networks that adds value to society. So we pay them. Google, and so on and so forth. These companies are just computer networks that add so much value to society that we pay them insane amounts of money. And that's why the valuation of those companies goes up. Same thing's happening with cryptocurrencies. We are at the forefront of that. Now, the confluence of the ability for you to be able to save your purchasing power as well as invest in the future. Now, that's something that's never happened before, because it's almost like the internet's been reinvented. If we're looking at Bitcoin and it's a computer network that stores value, kind of like gold stores value, then that's like gold being reinvented. I'm talking in an analogy, but it's almost true. It is true that gold has been reinvented and internet's been reinvented, and thousands of other valuable use cases have been reinvented, and we get to invest in many of them right now. And companies are realizing that. Companies who have billions and billions and hundreds of billions of dollars on their balance sheets and funds that have trillions are realizing, if we keep our trillions and trillions of dollars in cash or our traditional kind of vehicles, and they go and print a bunch of money, no matter what the price of the asset is in dollars, we're still going to be losing a lot of our purchasing power, unless obviously the price just climbs faster, which can happen for some assets. But they're realizing that if they take those hundreds of billions of dollars and they put it into something like Bitcoin, where nobody can go and print more Bitcoin, it's math, it's code, nobody can change that code unanimously like that, or nobody can single-handedly change that code, nobody can print more Bitcoin, it's secure from being debased, then it's a good place to keep your purchasing power and predictably be conserved for a long time in the future. So, if corporations are realizing that, and many individuals are realizing that, and then it's starting to be adopted across the world, then it's a really good idea for you to start looking into that sphere. Now, in order to do that, there's a few different things that you have to make sure you take care of. Obviously, like we said, you have to understand your relationship to the money that you're investing, because you are taking a risk by investing this money into such a kind of infant technology, and it still hasn't fully developed and matured, so you are taking some risks. So you have to understand what's your relationship with that. You have to understand the psychology, like we discussed, of what is this market, how does it operate, what psychology is involved in kind of investing in these markets, and how can you be taken advantage of. You have to make sure that you're not investing in scams, because there are a lot of scams in this market, because it's completely unregulated. It's internet magic money, so there's tons of scammers out there trying to get you to spend your money on it. You have to make sure that you pick a portfolio of cryptos that you can trust to be able to give you the value, that they're not just going to run away with it. You also have to make sure that you understand how to invest, how to risk balance your portfolio, how to get your money from your bank into the cryptocurrency sphere, how to stay in the market, how to pay taxes, all the stuff that I kind of covered in the overview, and that's what we're going to be covering in these talks. Also, another kind of interesting tidbit that I want you to realize is, we've had companies before where they would produce goods, and then that's the value that they would add to society, so we'd pay them X amount of money. They would have to produce things for them to be valuable, right? But the internet allowed networks to become valuable. They don't produce things. Like Facebook doesn't produce websites. It just produced a platform where the network became valuable, and that's why the growth curve and the kind of value that we accrue to Facebook has just been, going up for ever since it started, basically. The same thing's happening. So Facebook is the social media network. Amazon is like a retail network. Google is like an informational network. So as more and more people join these platforms, they become more and more valuable. If you really want to learn about that, Google something called Metcalfe's Law. That's a great topic that really shows you how network value is completely different from valuing companies that produce stuff, right? But we never had a network of money. Money was always just stuck on the old banking system, stuck in accounts. There was no network, nowhere to join. We all just have our own banks, basically. Now, Bitcoin and crypto in general is the network of money. So as more and more people join it and more people start using it, it becomes more and more valuable. And so that, combined with the fact that currencies are being debased, means that the dollar-denominated price of Bitcoin will presumably keep going up over the next 10, 20, 30 years. And if you think, okay, less and less Bitcoin are produced, then obviously the value has to keep going up. And one day, 21 million Bitcoin will be produced, and no more will be produced beyond that. So it's like, it's like a Picasso. If there's only 100 Picassos out there, and there's no more that are going to be produced, it's very logical that a Picasso sold for $110 million. Right? So that's kind of what we're looking at. It's a scarce asset that allows you to save your purchasing power. It's reliable. It has many of the features and kind of properties of money, and many of the properties that even gold has, but it has them in a better way. And that's why it's a good idea to go in. So that's what we're going to be focusing on. We're going to be going through all these pieces so this was kind of just a general overview. Next, we're going to move into how to take a look at different cryptos and how to understand first the different sectors that exist, and also which hot sectors there are within crypto and which specific cryptos are really interesting to take a look at, and they have really good teams, really good use cases, all that stuff behind it. So thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. I'll see you in the next piece. Thanks. Bye.